Welcome to the Scenario Podcast, your guide to mental health and well-being. Each episode, we uncover practical tools, discuss expert insights, and explore how supplements can transform your mental health journey. Get ready to learn, grow, and thrive with us.
Welcome to the deep dive. So you've sent us some really interesting stuff about vitamin D deficiency.
Yeah.
And this potential link to depression.
It's a connection that's definitely getting more attention.
Right. So our mission today is basically to dig into these sources you shared. We want to pull out the key insights for you about how vitamin D might actually connect to your mental well-being.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, we often think of vitamin D and we immediately go to bone health. Strong bones, calcium absorption.
Yeah, that's the standard association.
But the research you've highlighted, it really points to a much bigger picture. Especially when we look at mental health, there seems to be a strong link emerging between lower vitamin D and, mood issues.
Okay, so let's get started with the basics for everyone listening. What exactly is vitamin D? Because it sounds like it behaves a bit differently from, say, vitamin C or B vitamins.
That's a really good point. It is different. It's a fat-soluble vitamin, technically, but your body actually treats it much more like a hormone.
Ah, okay.
So its famous job is helping us absorb calcium, vital for bones, like we said, but it's also doing other really important things supporting your immune system.
Mm-hmm.
And crucially for what we're talking about today, it plays a big role in regulating your mood.
Okay. And the sources mentioned D2 and D3. Are those the same thing, basically, or is there a difference we should know about?
Good question. There are two main forms, yeah. Vitamin D2, that's ergocalciferol. You mostly get that from plants and fortified foods, like fortified cereals or milk.
Gotcha.
Then there's D3 calciferol. That's the one your skin makes when you're out in the sun.
The sunshine vitamin.
That's the one. And you also find it in animal products like fatty fish or egg yolks.
Yeah.
But here's the interesting part. Your body takes both D2 and D3 and converts them.
Converts them into what?
Into something called 25-hydroxyvitamin D, usually written as 25-OHD. And that's the form that doctors actually measure when they do a blood test to see what your vitamin D status is.
Okay, so the body standardizes it, basically. Now, this is where it gets really fascinating for me. How does this hormone-like vitamin actually, impact our brains, our feelings?
Right. Well, what's really striking is that scientists have found vitamin G receptors in parts of the brain that we know are deeply involved in emotions.
Receptors, like docking stations for vitamin D.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think about areas like the prefrontal cortex that's involved in decision-making, personality, the hippocampus, crucial for memory formation and mood, and the amygdala, which is like the brain's fear and emotion processing center.
Wow. So it's not just floating around, it's actively plugging into the brain's emotional hardware.
That seems to be the case. It's directly interacting with the machinery that regulates how we feel.
So what happens when it docks there? What are the effects?
Well, the research suggests a few key things. One big one is helping regulate those really important mood chemicals, serotonin, dopamine.
The feel-good neurotransmitters?
Exactly those. Vitamin D seems to play a role in their production and function. And then there's inflammation.
Ah, yeah. You hear a lot about brain inflammation and mood disorders now.
Definitely. And vitamin D appears to help reduce inflammation within the brain. We know that higher inflammation levels are often linked with anxiety and depression.
Makes sense. Anything else?
Yeah, a couple more things. It seems to support neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity. That's the brain's ability to change and adapt, right?
Precisely. Its ability to form new connections, rewire itself, essentially making it more resilient to stress. And finally, it's involved in regulating cortisol levels.
The stress hormone.
Right. It influences the HPA axis, that's the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which is your body's main stress response system. So if your vitamin D is low,
then these systems might not work as well.
that's the idea. They might not function optimally, and that could potentially make you more vulnerable to mental health issues like depression or anxiety.
Okay, that's a lot of important jobs. The sources say the signs can be pretty subtle.
They really can be. That's why it often goes unnoticed. Some common things to look out for might be feeling tired all the time, like a persistent fatigue that doesn't really go away with rest.
Okay.
Muscle weakness, maybe some aches and pains in your muscles or even your bones. Getting sick, often like catching every cold that goes around.
Right, the immune connection.
Yeah. And then, of course, the mood changes. We're focusing on feeling down, depressed, maybe more irritable. Even things like brain fog or finding it hard to concentrate could be related.
And what makes someone more likely to be low in the first place? Are there specific risk factors?
Yeah, several things can increase your risk. Limited sun exposure is a really big one. If you live somewhere with long winters or work indoors most of the time or consistently use strong sunscreen,
Which many of us do for good reason.
absolutely. But it does limit deep production. Also, having darker skin pigmentation naturally provides more sun protection, which means less vitamin D synthesis.
Interesting.
Age is another factor. As we get older, our skin just becomes less efficient at making vitamin D. And body weight can play a role too. Having a higher BMI, being obese, vitamin D is fat-soluble, so it can get sequestered or stored in fat tissue, making less of it available in your bloodstream.
So it's there, but maybe not accessible.
Sort of, yeah. And then, pretty obviously, diet. If you don't eat many vitamin D-rich foods, like fatty fish, salmon, mackerel, egg yolks, or foods fortified with vitamin D.
Like some dairy products or cereal.
Exactly. Then your intake might just be too low.
All right. So we understand what it does, the signs of being low, the risk factors. Let's get back to the research you mentioned. What are the studies actually telling us about this vitamin D depression link for you, the listener?
Okay, so there are different types of studies. First, you have observational studies. These basically look at large groups of people and see if there are patterns.
Correlations, right? Not necessarily cause and effect.
Exactly. And these observational studies have been pretty consistent. They frequently find that people with lower levels of vitamin D also tend to have higher rates of depression.
Any specific examples jump out?
Yeah, the sources you shared mentioned a big meta-analysis from 2013. It pooled data from over 31,000 people, and it found a significant link. Lower vitamin D levels were associated with a greater risk of depression.
31,000 people, wow. That's substantial.
It is. And in another review, this one in Psychiatry Research from 2018, specifically noted that people diagnosed with major depressive disorder often had lower levels of that 25-OHD, the form we measure, compared to people without depression.
So the pattern seems pretty clear in those types of studies. Low D, higher depression rates often go together.
That's the consistent finding, yes. It strongly suggests a relationship. Even if it doesn't prove that one causes the other, it's a signal we really can't ignore.
Right, because correlation isn't causation, as they always say.
Precisely. Just because two things happen together doesn't mean low D is making someone depressed. That's where you need different kinds of studies.
Like the randomized controlled trials, RCTs.
Exactly. Those are the gold standard for trying to figure out cause and effect. You take a group of people, give some vitamin D, some placebo, and see what happens to their depression symptoms.
And what have those RCTs found? Is it clear-cut?
It's been a bit more mixed, honestly. Not every single trial shows a huge effect, but there are definitely encouraging results, especially under certain conditions.
Okay, like what conditions? Where do we see the benefits?
Well, the biggest improvements in mood often seem to happen in people who started out with genuinely low vitamin D levels, like clinically deficient.
So if you're already sufficient, maybe adding more doesn't do much for mood.
That could be part of it. The benefit seems greatest for those who are correcting a deficiency. And also, studies using higher therapeutic doses, usually under medical guidance, tend to show more positive results.
Any examples there?
Yeah, one source mentioned a 2014 trial. It looked at women who had both type 2 diabetes and depression. They were given a pretty high weekly dose, 50,000 IU of vitamin D.
Wow, that sounds like a lot.
It's a common treatment dose for deficiency, usually short-term. And in that study, they did see improvements in their depression scores over 6 months compared to the placebo group.
Okay, that's interesting.
And then there was a big meta-analysis in 2020, pooling results from 25 different RCTs. Its conclusion was that, overall, vitamin D supplementation did lead to a modest, but statistically significant, reduction in depressive symptoms.
All less but significant.
Yeah. And again, the effects seem to be more pronounced in people who are actually deficient to begin with, so it's not like a magic bullet.
Right.
But for someone starting from a low point, getting their levels up could really make a difference to their mental well-being.
So it feels like the takeaway is it's not a guaranteed depression cure, but it's definitely a factor worth paying attention to, particularly if your levels are actually low.
I think that's a fair summary.
But that question still lingers. Does low vitamin D cause depression? Or is it the other way around? Or both? It sounds complex.
It really does seem complex. And you hit on a key point there. It's probably not the single cause for most people. Depression is usually multifaceted.
Yeah.
But vitamin D is looking more and more like an important piece of that puzzle. And this idea of a bidirectional relationship, That's gaining traction.
Bidirectional, meaning it could go both ways.
Exactly. Think about it. If someone is depressed, they might be less active, right? Spend less time outdoors.
Sure, low energy, lack of motivation.
Which means less sun exposure, so potentially lower vitamin D production. Their eating habits might also change, maybe not eating as many nutrient-rich foods. So depression itself could lead to lower vitamin D.
Okay, I see that side.
But then conversely, like we talked about earlier, low vitamin D can negatively affect brain chemistry, inflammation, stress response.
Which could increase the risk of developing depression or make existing depression worse.
Precisely. So it might be a bit of a cycle for some people. This interplay is why it's such an active area of research.
That makes a lot of sense. So, considering all this, the big question for you, the listener, becomes, should you think about taking a vitamin D supplement?
That's the practical question, isn't it? And supplementation could be really helpful in certain situations. Obviously, if you get a blood test and it shows you're deficient, usually defined as below 20 or 30 ng/ml, depending on the lab.
Then supplementation seems logical.
Yes. Also, if you live somewhere with very limited sunlight, especially in winter months, or if you're experiencing those symptoms we mentioned, ongoing fatigue, low mood, maybe getting sick a lot.
Especially if those symptoms seem worse in the winter.
That could be a clue, yeah. The winter blues sometimes have a vitamin D component. And also, if you know you have a history of depression and your diet isn't great in terms of D-rich foods, it might be worth discussing supplementation with your doctor.
And that's the key phrase, right? Discussing with your doctor. This isn't something you should just decide on your own?
Absolutely not. The sources are really clear on this. Always, always talk to a healthcare provider before starting any new supplement, including vitamin D.
Why is that so crucial?
Well, a few reasons. They can confirm if you actually need it through testing. They can recommend the right dose for you. And importantly, they need to check for any potential interactions if you're taking other medications or have other health conditions. Vitamin D can interact with certain drugs.
Okay, really important point. So let's say the doctor does recommend it. What kind of doses are we generally talking about?
So if you're actually deficient, the doctor might start you on a higher dose for a while to get your levels up. That could be something like 5,000 IU per day, or maybe that 50,000 IU dose once a week.
But that's usually temporary.
Yes,
Okay.
typically for maybe 8-12 weeks under their supervision, followed by retesting. For general ongoing maintenance for most adults, the range is often somewhere between 800 IU and 2,000 IUs per day.
Okay.
And a useful tip: take it with a meal that contains some fat, like avocado, nuts, olive oil, because vitamin D is fat soluble. That helps your body absorb it better.
Good tip. And is there like a target level in the blood that people are aiming for specifically for mood benefits?
The research is still evolving, but many experts suggest aiming for a level between 30 and 50 ng/ml. That seems to be a range associated with general health and potentially better mood outcomes compared to lower levels.
And if you are deficient and start supplementing, how quickly might you feel a difference, if at all?
It varies, of course, but for someone who is genuinely low, they might start noticing some subtle improvements, maybe in energy, maybe in mood, within about, say, 2 to 8 weeks of starting consistent supplementation.
So not overnight, but reasonably quickly.
Potentially, yeah. But it really depends on how low you were to start, the dose you're taking, your individual body, absorption, other factors. Consistency is really important, and follow-up testing with your doctor is key to make sure your levels are getting into the right range.
Right. Now, we've talked a lot about the problems of too little vitamin D. Can you have too much? Is vitamin D toxicity a real concern?
It is possible, yes. But it's actually pretty rare and usually happens only with extremely high doses taken for a long time.
Like much higher than the maintenance doses we mentioned.
Oh, yeah. We're typically talking about taking over 10,000 IU daily for months on end, usually without medical supervision. It's very hard to get toxic levels just from sun exposure or food.
Okay. And what happens if your levels do get too high? What are the symptoms?
Too much vitamin D can cause calcium to build up in your blood. That's called hypercalcemia. Symptoms might include things like nausea, vomiting, muscle weakness, feeling confused, maybe excessive thirst and urination.
And that high calcium can be dangerous.
Yes. Over time, it can potentially harm your kidneys and cause other problems. So again, it just highlights why sticking to recommended doses and working with a doctor is so important, especially if you're also taking calcium supplements.
Makes sense. So for you listening, if you're thinking, maybe I should check my levels, what's the actual process? How do you get tested?
It's usually very straightforward. Just ask your doctor, your primary care physician, for a vitamin D test. Specifically, you're asking for the 25-hydroxyvitamin D test, or 25-OHD.
And they just draw some blood.
Yep, simple blood test. The results will give you that number, usually in NGML or sometimes on mol.
And how do you interpret that number? What's considered low or high?
The source gave some general guidelines, though labs might vary slightly, generally. Below 20 NGML is considered deficient. 20 to 29 NGML is often called insufficient, not ideal, but not severely low. 30 to 50 NGML is typically seen as sufficient for most people.
Okay, that 30-50 range seems like the sweet spot.
That's often the target. And then levels over 100 NGMLs start getting into that potentially toxic range we talked about.
Got it. That's really helpful context. Now, the sources also touched on something important. Treating depression, or even just supporting mental wellness, isn't usually just about one single thing, like one vitamin.
Absolutely not. That's such a critical point. Vitamin D, if needed, should be seen as just one part of a much broader, holistic approach.
So what are some of those other key lifestyle pieces?
Well, regular exercise is huge for mood. Physical activity releases endorphins, reduces stress. It's incredibly powerful.
Getting enough good quality sleep is absolutely fundamental for emotional regulation and mental health.
Can't function well without it.
Nope. Diet, beyond just vitamin D, focusing on a whole foods diet. Rich in fruits, vegetables, healthy fats like omega-3s, which are also linked to brain health. That makes a difference. Reducing processed foods and sugar. And then, for many people, therapy is invaluable. Things like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, or mindfulness practices can really help you manage thoughts and emotions.
Learning coping skills.
And finally, don't underestimate social connection. Having strong, supportive relationships is a major protective factor against depression and stress.
Right. It's the whole picture. Okay, so to really bring this home for you, the listener, let's tackle a few specific questions you might still have. First one, how might you actually feel if your vitamin D was extremely low, like really bottomed out? Okay, yeah. If you're severely deficient, like well under 20 NGML, the symptoms can be pretty pronounced, you might feel this deep, unrelenting fatigue, just exhausted all the time.
More than just tired.
Yeah, like bone weary. Significant muscle aches or weakness could be there. You might find you're getting sick constantly, like your immune system just isn't coping. Emotionally, you could feel persistently sad, irritable, maybe quite anxious. Trouble concentrating, that brain fog we mentioned, could be really noticeable. And some people even report that their bones feel sensitive or achy to the touch.
So it really hits multiple systems hard.
It does. It underscores how vital it is for overall function, brain, immune system, muscles, bones.
Okay. Next question you might have. Can a vitamin deficiency in general really affect your mental health?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. We spent this whole time talking about vitamin D, but it's not the only one. Deficiencies in, say, B vitamins, particularly B12 and folate, are also strongly linked to mood problems.
To be vitamins, okay.
Magnesium is another big one. It's involved in so many brain processes, and low levels are often seen in people with depression and anxiety, and omega-3 fatty acids, like those found in fish oil.
Right. Important for brain structure and function.
Exactly. So, yes, nutritional deficiencies can definitely impact your mental state. Addressing those gaps, making sure you're getting adequate nutrients, can be a really fundamental part of supporting your emotional balance.
Good to know it's broader than just vitamin D. And a final question you might be wondering about. Can taking vitamin D actually help lower anxiety? We focused a lot on depression.
That's a great question. The research here is maybe a bit less extensive than for depression, but yes, there is evidence suggesting it may help with anxiety symptoms too, especially if you're deficient.
How might it do that? Similar mechanisms?
Pretty much, yeah. It seems to work through similar pathways, regulating those mood chemicals, interacting with brain receptors involved in fear and stress processing, supporting that HPA axis stress response.
Reducing inflammation again?
Reducing inflammation, absolutely, which is often elevated in anxiety disorders. Some specific ideas are that it might help regulate cortisol, support serotonin, which also affects anxiety, maybe improve sleep quality, which impacts anxiety.
Okay.
There was a study mentioned in one source from 2015 that found women supplementing with vitamin D reported lower anxiety scores compared to a placebo group.
Interesting.
So again, it's probably not a standalone cure for anxiety by any means, but could it be a helpful piece of an overall anxiety management strategy, particularly if deficiency is present? The evidence suggests it might be.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, the main takeaway seems to be that while vitamin D isn't some kind of magic pill for depression or anxiety,
Definitely not.
the research really does strongly suggest it plays a pretty significant role in our brain health and keeping our emotions stable.
I think that sums it up well. It's an important player.
Yeah.
So for you listening, if you've just been feeling off, especially if it seems worse during darker months or if some of those deficiency symptoms sounded familiar, it might be a really worthwhile proactive step to talk to your doctor about getting your vitamin D levels checked. It's a relatively simple thing that could potentially make a positive difference to how you feel overall.
A valuable step towards better mental health, potentially. And thinking about this powerful link we've explored between something seemingly physical, like a vitamin level, and our mental state, it kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other physical things might be impacting your emotional well-being more than you realize? Something to maybe think about or explore further in your own life.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Thanks for tuning in to the Scenario Podcast. Don't forget to visit scenario.com for more expert tips, articles, and supplements designed to support your mental health. If you enjoyed this episode, remember to subscribe and share it with a friend. Until next time, take care of yourself.